Remember when I said in the channel trailer that we'd be looking at the most amazing, classic, obscure, and even strange samurai films? Today, we're stepping into the strange territory. It stars Sonny Chiba as the protagonist, with his Shogun's Shadow counterpart, Ken Ogata, as one of his rivals. You may or may not recognize another name in the billing. Hiroyuki Sanada. If that name doesn't click with you, he has been active in Japanese cinema since 1965 and has also starred along with Sonny Chiba before. But if you still don't recognize him, then you can see him in many Western films such as Mortal Kombat as Hanzo Hasashi, Army of the Dead, and Bullet Train. In this film, Hiroyuki is much younger though. But let's continue on with today's title. It's a film about hatred and revenge beyond the grave, with majority of the votes on my channel, so this is your fault. We're reviewing the supernatural samurai Shambara called Samurai Reincarnation. I'm GojiraFerret, and I'm a bit nervous. Based off of the Futaro Yamada novel Makai Tensho, Samurai Reincarnation the movie would see its conception with Haruki Karakawa as producer. It would be co-written and directed by Kinji Fukasaku. The other half of the writing would be contributed to Tatsuo Nogami. Fukasaku would be de facto director, as the original director Hideo Gosha was arrested on firearms charges nearly a year into development. The film would stick to the source material and involve a lot of real-life Japanese samurais as characters, and even based off an actual conflict, but that's as far as the historical basis goes. Kiyoshi Hasegawa would be given the role of cinematographer, with the music being handled by the duo Hozan Yamamoto and Mitsuyaki Kano. Printed in color on 35mm using the spherical cinema process, Samurai Reincarnation would see a 2-hour and 2-minute runtime, being distributed on June 6 of 1981 by Toei Company. Throughout its lifetime, the film would be constantly released and recut and even bootlegged. Some versions even depicted Sonny Chiba as his character Shoizamon in Shogun's Shadow on the poster. It would also be dubbed in English, which is the version I ended up with. It's also said that it's the inspiration for the video game by SNK called Samurai Showdown. Following the events of the Shambara Rebellion, which was a real-life conflict between the Tokugawa Shogunate and the Japanese Catholics in early 16th century, the dispute ending in the bloody defeat of the Japanese Catholics. It's said the rebellion leader Amakusa Shiro's head was taken and displayed for all to see. During a celebration, Shiro is resurrected, and after seeing thousands of heads on pikes, renounces God and pledges his soul and allegiance to hell itself. Shiro is given great power and swears vengeance for all of the allies that were slaughtered by the Tokugawa Shogunate. Using his new powers to resurrect the dead, he recruits the dead wife of a samurai, Hosokawa, played by Akiko Kana. Eventually, she agrees to join Shiro's quest for revenge, but not before explaining her circumstances, which reveals she was betrayed by her lover and paid the ultimate price for it. Rotting alone in a tomb is the legendary sword saint Musashi Miyamoto, another real-life person and a very influential figure of Japanese history. You may be familiar with the Hiroshi Inagaki films The Samurai Trilogy, starring Toshiro Mifune. These films chronicle the life of historical sword fighter and samurai Musashi Miyamoto, who created the sword style Niten Ichi Ryu, which utilizes the usage of 2 swords instead of 1. He would also have his 5 scrolls printed for years to come under the title Book of the 5 Rings. The sword saint, or Kensei, sits and contemplates his past life, realizing he died unfulfilled after not being allotted a duel with the Yagyu clan's lord. Shiro arrives and enlists Miyamoto's swordsmanship, but not before a bit of resistance from Miyamoto. Afterwards, Jubei Yagyu is seen pursuing the growing band of demons. Later, a monk is seen walking amongst a group of women before he savagely cuts them down. After realizing it was just another dark fantasy, he is met by Hosokawa, who taunts him for being a monk with such dark desires. He drives his own spearhead into his body in an attempt to avoid Hosokawa's mockery. As death overcomes the monk, Shiro convinces him to vow his soul to his cause and join his band of resurrected souls. Back in a quiet village, the Koga ninja clan attacks, causing one of the ninjas and Jubei Yagyu's friend, Kirimaru, to narrowly escape death with the assistance of Shiro and his group. Using Kirimaru's anger and promising vengeance against the Koga clan, the young ninja joins Shiro. Jubei attempts to make contact, but the band of demons taunt Jubei and make their leave. Jubei, realizing that his enemies are otherworldly, seeks out the swordsmith Muramasa, who recently forged a powerful sword for Jubei's father, Tajima. Little does Jubei know, Edo Castle is being silently infiltrated by the band of Shiro's demons, causing the seduction of the shogun, withering of Tokugawa's crops, and the abrupt death of many of Yagyu clan members. Muramasa and his adopted daughter protest the making of another sword, but the resurrected Kinsei Miyamoto arrives and tries to forcefully enter Muramasa's shack. Prompted by the swordmaker, his adopted daughter begins to play the flute, which reveals that Muramasa's daughter is actually Miyamoto's. The Kinsei recognizes the music and is unable to continue his siege. Realizing how dire the situation is, the swordsmith agrees, knowing it may cost him his life. Back in Edo, the shogun is accompanied by Hosokawa, who has successfully seduced him, as well as possessed many of the shogun's men. They decide to go on a hunting excursion, which ends in the death of innocent farmers after the shogun and his party are tricked into thinking the peasants are deer. This begins a spark of revolt inside the already distraught farmers. Later that night, the bodies of the farmers are crucified and displayed outside of the village, and with the help of Shiro's influence, the peasants revolt. Shiro congratulates the farmers and encourages them to storm Edo Castle. Kirimaru falls in love with a young woman and decides he no longer seeks revenge. Shiro confronts him, and after a short fight, Kirimaru falls. During the uprising, Jubei and Muramasa complete his new sword, and just as feared, the ailing swordsmith passes away. During Muramasa's funeral, Miyamoto challenges Jubei to the duel that they never were able to have, and gives him the time and place. The Yagyu swordsman agrees to Miyamoto's terms and continues the funeral, even burning the body of his fallen friend Kirimaru. That next morning, Jubei and Miyamoto meet on the beach with the Sword Saint's daughter in tow. The two swordsmen square off in a duel, and after a great display of skill from both sides, Miyamoto catches the blade of Jubei's new sword. The farmers' revolt against Edo begins, as Jubei's father, played by the legend Tomisaburo Wakayama, is cleaning his sword. Shiro arrives, and it's implied that the Yagyu lord is under the influence of the vengeful spirit. The siege begins, and Jubei's father begins slaughtering his own retainers, showing that he still has an abundance of swordsmanship. The young Tokugawa shogun is kidnapped by Hokusawa with the assistance of the possessed Yagyu lord. Edo Castle is engulfed in flames as Shiro confronts the frightened shogun. He taunts and tortures his victim as he curses the Tokugawa Shogunate. Hosokawa, driven blind by despair for her dead lover, mistakes the shogun for him and ends up dragging the young lord down a burning flight of stairs. Lord Yagyu calls out for his son, who shows himself. The two have a heated exchange before the Yagyu swordsmen cross their blades. Jubei finds himself at times against the ropes, but ends up overcoming his father and putting him out of his misery. The flames of the burning castle rage as Shiro approaches Jubei. After making an offer to the Yagyu samurai to have eternal life, he is turned down by his rival. Both fight amongst the burning framework of Edo Castle, eventually ending with the decapitation of Shiro. Holding his head tight against his own waist, Shiro gives a "You have not seen the last of me" speech. The demon disappears, and the movie abruptly ends with some sort of 80s cop show music, leaving me saying, "What?" Wow, we have a lot to unpack. In terms of cinematography, I can't really compliment the video quality. My copy was obviously a bootleg I bought at a flea market, so I can't say either way if the resolution was good or bad for the time period. I can, though, compliment the set pieces and shots that Kiyoshi Hasegawa gave us. The sets are grim and very haunting. This is in contrast to other samurai films that enjoy showcasing beautiful Japanese landscapes and scenery. For this movie, the set pieces are foggy and dark, making the viewer very uncomfortable. The color scheme works very well for the movie and what emotions it's trying to convey. I feel like a lot of the acting is akin to kabuki theater. Movements are exaggerated and dramatic, especially in scenes with Akiko and Shiro's actor, Kenji Sawada. After doing some research, I can't find anything about them having experience in kabuki, but I did see Sawada was a musician as well, much like Masaki Kiyomoto, who played Iemitsu in Shogun's Shadow. Maybe there's a connection to musicians taking inspiration from kabuki when given acting roles. I did, though, take issue with my copy as it was English dubbed, and my goodness, it was awful. It made it hard for me to pay attention to the acting, as I firmly believe the voices were all done by the same voice actor. You can't have Sonny Chiba in a samurai movie without some amazing action. It wasn't as choreographed as Shogun's Shadow, but you have three of the best on-screen swordsmen at your disposal. Sonny and Ken both displayed absolute competence in swordsmanship, and their duel was well choreographed. When Sonny and Tomisaburo duel, it's obvious that Wakayama was more grounded. He has his own style, and you can see Ogami Ito in a lot of his movements. His styles paired well with Chiba's, and the two put on a great climactic sword duel between father and son. I would say the weakest duels would go to anyone and Shiro, as he employs a long strand of hair that he swings and whips at his opponents, making some sort of Atari sound effect. Dialogue. It was awful. And I don't even know if it was written poorly, or if whoever did the English dubbing and translation was just horrible at their job. Voices didn't even fit, and even their level of emotion never came through. but I must say Shiro was given the best lines with
Stupid.
and
What?
masterfully written. Music is a whole different beast, as it borderlines very creepy, yet with the satanic imagery, you can hear hints of heavy metal. With the movie being developed in the late 70s and early 80s, you can hear some influential guitar riffs and dark notes to accompany the movie's eerie and evil theme. I really don't know what to make of this film. It's definitely not the best I've seen, and I'm not going to say it's the worst, though I found myself a bit outside my wheelhouse with this film. It's way different than anything in the genre. It's not your typical Chambara, and I don't know if it could be classified entirely as one. It's a supernatural thriller that is sprinkled with samurais and sword fights. Yeah, maybe this is a samurai film, but it's so unconventional that it's a mix maybe. Like I said, I can't make heads or tails of this film. Is it good? Yes. Is it great? No. Does it have good action? Yes. Would I recommend it? Yes, but not over many other films. If you are, though, looking for a wild and crazy samurai film involving samurais versus demons and an out-of-pocket plot, I would say this is a good film to watch with some of your like-minded friends. That was quite the ride, and I'm glad you came along with me. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please give this video a like. If you're interested and want more, give Samurai Cinema a subscribe. I'm GojiraFerret, and I'm gonna go take a nap.